He flung his bag onto the chair, his hand instinctively moving to massage the back of his neck. The bed appeared rather diminutive. It wasn't truly the case, yet the circumstances rendered it so. With a soft sigh, Emily sank onto the mattress, feeling it yield beneath her, a gentle bounce accompanying her descent. At least, she murmured, it's not the worst place I've ever stayed. He let out a derisive laugh. That sets a rather modest standard. She discarded her shoes, extending her limbs in a leisurely manner. Unwind. It is merely a single night. He found himself uncertain whether her words were intended for him or were a reflection of her own inner thoughts. He averted his gaze, unzipping his jacket, attempting to dismiss the reality that the sole remaining seat was beside her. Time lingered in a heavy stillness. The air conditioner buzzed softly, enveloping the room in a refreshing chill. He seized a spare pillow and let it fall to the floor. "What are you doing?" she inquired. "Resting in this place." Emily reclined on one elbow, her gaze fixed intently upon him. "That is utterly absurd. I am well." She let out a dramatic sigh, her eyes swirling in exasperation. "Prepare yourself for a morning filled with discomfort and discontent." He chose not to engage in a dispute. He reclined, his gaze fixed upon the ceiling above. Yet the floor was unforgiving, his body already protesting with aches. He shut his eyes, summoning the embrace of slumber. After a brief silence, her voice pierced through the stillness. "Have you ever sensed that you're in a rut?" His brow furrowed in discontent. "In what way are you feeling trapped?" She adjusted her position, her voice now a gentle whisper. "Feels as though you're merely following a routine, fulfilling obligations rather than pursuing your true desires." The inquiry lingered in the space that separated them. He drew in a deep breath. Indeed, Emily released a breath, as if she had been waiting to exhale for far too long. "I believed I was alone in this experience." He tilted his head ever so slightly, his gaze falling upon her silhouette, softly outlined in the muted glow of the dim light. Her voice carried a certain vulnerability, a raw authenticity that resonated deeply. He conceded that you are not. Stillness. Then, in a hush that seemed to envelop the air, she whispered, "Come up here." His breath hitched. "Emily, simply to rest," she interrupted. "It's merely a trifling matter." He paused for a moment, then summoned the strength to rise. The mattress sagged slightly beneath him as he settled in, mindful to remain on his designated side. Time slipped away moment by moment. Neither of them stirred. In the stillness, her fingers grazed against his. A mishap? Perhaps not. Neither of them withdrew. Her fingers brushed against his, delicate and hesitant. He had the option to pull away, he ought to have done so, yet he remained. The warmth of her touch pierced him with an unexpected intensity, a sensation he was ill-equipped to confront. Silence enveloped her. He did not either. The stillness weighed more than it had throughout the evening. In a subtle movement, she drew nearer. The aroma of her hair, subtly sweet, enveloped the air that lingered between them. He willed himself to remain motionless, to feign that this was inconsequential. Yet the atmosphere had shifted, imbued with an unspoken tension that neither acknowledged, yet both sensed deeply. She released her breath with a measured slowness. "Your heartbeat eludes my ears." His chest constricted. "It's time for you to rest, Emily." A soft chuckle. "You seem to be on edge." Indeed, he certainly was. Every fiber of his being was wound too tightly, each rational thought grappling with a force far more powerful. She lingered just a breath away. The warmth of her skin enveloped him, accompanied by the gentle rhythm of her breath, rising and falling softly. "I don't bite," she murmured, a playful lilt in her tone. Yet an undercurrent of something deeper lingered in her voice, an air of uncertainty. He gulped with difficulty. "The issue lies elsewhere." Once more, silence enveloped them. Yet this time, it resonated with meaning. It brimmed with all the unspoken words between them. Then, just above a whisper, she inquired, "What is?" His hand tightened into a fist upon the sheets. She lingered in anticipation of a response, yet none seemed safe enough to guide them away from perilous paths. It is time for him to rise. He ought to create a gap between them. He ought to remind both her and himself that this was an inevitable misstep in the making. Instead, his fingers relaxed, parting just enough for hers to glide into the gaps that remained. A deliberate breath in, a moment of stillness. Then, with deliberate intent, her grip tightened. His heartbeat throbbed in his ears. She continued on, unwavering. He was not either. Her thumb grazed his knuckles. A fleeting touch, yet it ignited a shiver that coursed up his spine. His body tightened, yet not in defiance. He found himself on the losing side. He was already aware of that. Then she murmured, "Do you ever ponder?" He tilted his head ever so slightly, directing his gaze toward her in the soft, muted light of the bedside lamp. "What is it that piques your curiosity?" Had circumstances shifted, a fissure shattered his determination. His voice emerged, rough and gravelly, as he spoke. Indeed, a moment of stillness, a languid, profound inhalation. In that moment she shifted. Not a great deal, sufficiently ample. Her lips lingered just above his, poised in anticipation, offering him a decision. A decision he had long since anticipated. In a heartbeat, the distance that once separated them vanished. Their breaths intertwined, a blend of warmth and uncertainty. He might have chosen to withdraw. He ought to have, yet he did not. Time seemed to elongate, with neither of them shifting, nor uttering a word. Then, as if stepping over an irrevocable boundary, he bridged the final inch that separated them. Their lips brushed together, tentative at first, as if exploring the uncharted territory between them. Yet, the moment her reply came, a shift occurred within him. Her fingers wove into the fabric of his shirt, drawing him nearer. He offered no resistance. He was unable to. All logical reasoning slipped away, overwhelmed by the sensation of her presence against him. Her body nestled against his as if it had always been meant to be, and that filled him with dread. A quick intake of air. A gentle murmur lingered in the space between them. He was acutely aware of the wrongness of the situation, of the irreversible path they were about to tread. Yet the thought of halting seemed utterly unattainable. She leaned into him, her warmth enveloping his skin, dispelling any remnants of doubt that had lingered within. His hands gently traced the curve of her waist, fingertips gliding softly over the exposed skin just beneath her shirt. She quivered, not from fear, but from an entirely different sensation. Perilous situation. In that fleeting instant, time seemed to stand still for both of them. Then she murmured, "We ought not to." The words lingered in the atmosphere, yet lacked any true conviction. No genuine purpose. Her fingers remained steadfast. She remained still, not retreating from his presence. He gulped, his voice barely above a whisper. "I am aware." Their gazes intertwined, vast and ambiguous. Yet she remained still. He did not either. They had crossed the threshold of second chances. Beyond the threshold of feigning indifference to this reality. She lifted her chin, her lips grazing his once more. Neither a mere coincidence nor a moment of doubt, but rather a beckoning call. It was a moment he found himself unable to resist. Yet another kiss, more profound this time, increased assurance. Her hands glided up his chest, fingers brushing lightly against his skin. Each caress ignited a blaze, consuming the last remnants of his defiance. He had ceased to think. He failed to contemplate the repercussions, the unavoidable aftermath. The only thing that held significance was the way her gaze met his. Her whisper of his name felt as if it were the sole reality in that moment, and the manner in which he softly echoed hers in return. The atmosphere in the room had shifted, carrying a new weight. Weightier, imbued with an indefinable essence. Their breaths came in ragged gasps. The void that separated them was but an illusion. Silence enveloped them both, yet there was no necessity for them to do so. Her gaze lingered on him, as if she were on a quest for something elusive, perhaps a justification to cease. He might have offered her one. He ought to have. His fingers glided along the curve of her jaw, each movement slow and intentional, etching every detail into his memory. A soft breath drawn in, a moment of uncertainty, Then, just as swiftly as they had succumbed to this, reality came thundering back. She was the first to tense up. He sensed it in the subtle twitch of her fingers against his skin. As her breath changed its rhythm, he sensed its arrival even before her words broke the silence. Her voice floated softly, barely rising above a whisper. "What are our current endeavors?" He released a slow breath, his eyes fluttering shut for just an instant.
"I'm uncertain."
A moment of stillness. She withdrew, creating a gap that rendered the space between them excruciatingly palpable. He allowed her to proceed. She enveloped herself in her own embrace, as if she were striving to keep something intact. Perhaps it was a sense of guilt. Perhaps it was a sense of regret. Perhaps it was the crushing burden of all they had just accomplished. "This isn't meant to be," she whispered softly. He propped himself up, running a hand through his tousled hair. The distance that separated them seemed to stretch infinitely, despite their physical proximity of mere inches. "I am aware." The silence hung heavily in the air, dense and oppressive. The weight of the present moment enveloped me. It was more than a mere error. It was an experience that transcended their expectations, a profound connection neither had anticipated. Her voice trembled. "Shall we simply act as though it never occurred?" He faced her, observing the way her gaze roamed through his, yearning for a response. He possessed none. Was it possible for him to feign? Could he simply turn his back and pretend that nothing was different, when in truth, everything had shifted? He ought to have agreed. Instead, he extended his hand, their fingers grazing each other for a fleeting moment. "I doubt I have the ability to do that." Her breath caught in her throat, yet she remained close, and that was the only response they sought.